Hi, and welcome everybody today to Child in Society SIG, the difficult dialogue strand. So thank you all for joining us at lunchtime for this 1 hour session. Today I'm going to chair and present, showing a few different things at once. So hopefully, but it's very much a team approach today. We're Sharon Advogogi from Middlesex University, and it's an early childhood studies team kind of approach and creation along with the students and our stakeholders. So I think all of us in here today will be jumping in and out of roles and dialoguing hopefully and sharing experiences. So I'm aiming to present for about up to 30 minutes, and then we've got 30 minutes for dialogues. It's called difficult dialogue, so it'd be great to have some dialogue with everybody if that's possible. So please do use the chat. Please do kind of share any reflections, responses, ideas, or anything at all where you might think, oh, that could link to a different program, or this could be something that we could work collaboratively together, or use, disseminate and share in other areas of university life programs or in the professional services, for instance. So I'll make a start. Let's hope sharing the screen works in practice just as much as it does in theory. So, okay. How's that, Shams?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Lovely. Okay, that's great. Okay, I'll make a start. Okay, so act, share and reflect, dialogues in, out and through placement in early years settings. So we're really looking together at bringing in placement to our degree programme and how we fuse the academic with the professional, and then bringing in another dimension of engaging in placement with our students to support their learning, their knowledges, their skills, and all aspects really that relate to professionalism, to academic skills, and to progressing when they leave their degree. So the picture is really powerful, and I'm going to share that with you because it's a cave in Kinver that I came across in one of my walks, and it's really historic because the cave is so old, really built on foundations of and years and millennium of growth, change, shifts, and I kind of really linked the cave opening to looking out and beyond what happens when we go into placement, what's happening through this cave. And we can't always know what's going to happen depending on the time, the place and the situation. So I just found it to be a really provocative metaphor for placement, and to ensure that we remember not to think we know what our students are going through, that we need to be finding out what they're going through, making sure that we're engaging with them, that we are listening to them, and that we are responding to placement in the 21st century, particularly for our programme where it's quite new. So I'll just move on. Okay, so those of us that work in practice, in sector, in academia, wherever we work, we're dealing with practice, and we are then translating it either from or into theory. And as you can see, this slide provokes us to think about reflecting on our placement, our teaching, our dialogue, and everything that we're doing because of what our students need, because of what our jobs are, because of what we've got to do to meet academic levels, descriptors, learning outcomes, aims, then placement and sector requirements all at the same time. So there's lots for us to do. And I think those of us working in academia in present day are really merging together lots of hybrid skills and lots of hybrid doings and beings, which weren't always necessarily in place, and we're having to change quite quickly. So learning about placement from our students, we found on the early childhood studies degree is vital, particularly because we brought placement in the last 2 years. So our interactions with stakeholders, with students and with each other have been really invaluable tools for us to reflect on, so that we can inform our degrees, our programmes, our modules, our assessments and our teaching weekly with the students who are in placement. So we wanted to provoke and to ponder on what's it like for 21st century students in placement What's their experiences like? What does it feel like? What are the students telling us? What are they expressing? What are they experiencing? And how are we, as the academics, as the professionals working with them on their degree and their journey, how are we interpreting and how are we understanding what it is that they're expressing? And actually, are we interpreting? Are we understanding what's being expressed to us? Are we listening? So what changes and shifts in practice are happening maybe that's different to our own expectations? And how do these shifts impact on our student practitioners? How do they impact on their retention, their achievement, their experiences, their want and their need to progress in the sector that they've chosen to research in, to get their degree in, to belong to? So we wanted to really think about that, and we had to do that as a way to develop the programme. So also thinking about the QAA, they're currently funding research to explore programmes who are linking to placement and who are thinking about sector involvement and links as to how do our assessment link and how are they relevant to the sector that the students are working in. So the QAA is funding research projects currently at the moment to make sure that assessment is fit for purpose, so that all assessment is relevant and equitable for the students who are studying in a particular role. So the advogogy that we're going to be looking at today, the advogogy is the concept created from our placement experiences, really could be a model that goes pan-university or cross-sectors. It doesn't have to be just used for early years. It's been created by us in early years, but it is a model that we're hoping that can go wider. So traditionally, universities have particular ways of doing what they do. Teaching and learning and assessment types have kind of been quite static in particular disciplines for a while. They might kind of always follow a particular format, but we know with the 21st century shifts and changes across education that there is a discourse and there is a mismatch at times, and we need to make hybrid transitions that challenge dominant norms and expectations and the ways of doing and being within academia to make sure that what we're doing is fit for purpose, and we need to be able to evolve with our students and the sectors that we're working with and for. So with all this in mind, the early years team, we reflected together, we diffracted, we gave up hope, we had hope, all of these things that we will go in and out when change happens. But after all, we are curious and we are learning with our students. And we wanted to really make sure that we engaged and immersed in our student practitioner experiences in placement. So the theory into practice and the practice and theory, I really wanted to spend some time on this slide because it's the chicken and the egg. Do we have practice first, theory first? Where does the research project begin? Where does it happen? So we're kind of at a stage where we're just beginning to maybe change and take forward what we've learned from our teaching and our reflection and evaluations of modules and student experiences, and we want to make that into a research project, but we want to also at the same time celebrate the teaching and learning that's happening with the students, with the staff, with the programme and with the modules and with our stakeholders. So we wanted to make sure that we transform placement experiences, not just from the teaching and learning that we do, but we wanted to transform what we were actually doing, because many structures, I used the word tradition earlier, many structures in universities are kind of have been inherited, or they're always used in the same way. And actually we need to be more transformative and braver, and according to the QAA, they're really looking for that within the teaching and learning, the assessment triangle of what we do on our degree programmes. So how do we transform what we're doing whilst making sure we meet all the criteria? Not much to discuss at lunchtime. So we are transforming, we're moving forward, we're changing on many levels. But to do that, we need dialogue. We need dialogic discussions, interactions and communications so that we can begin to make changes that are authentic and purposeful. So a placement overview on the Early Childhood Studies degree programme and placement experience. We have 3 years of placement. So currently we're moving towards year 2, the end of our year 2. So we've only been running placement for 2 years. Before that, we had a degree that was much more theoretical. This degree now has got much more practice engagement and placement engagement. So our year 1 in placement, we decided as a team to really begin to look at the expectations. What does a professional who's going to be studying, working, researching and impacting on in the discipline of early childhood, what is it that they are expected to know, they're expected to do, they're expected to prepare for? So we began to work with the students in year 1 to prepare them for the expectations for what they would have to do in the real world, so real words preparation. The second year is about impact, building on year 1, and it's about their impact in the placement, being more conscious, being reflective and diffractive, thinking about what is it I'm doing, why am I doing it, how am I doing it? And in year 3, we continue to build on year 1 and 2, and we look at our student practitioners, thinking of them as and themselves as agents of change. How am I changing? What is it I'm changing? How do I know what I'm changing is apt? Obviously, we don't want to send students in to make changes in settings because of their degree that actually doesn't immerse and fit authentically into the setting that they're in. Otherwise, you're going to get a discourse and some real challenges there. So these are the kind of stepping stones, the year 1, 2 and 3 ideas that we kind of used as the philosophy for our placement. But we also began to notice that there was lots of functional skills, lots of other aspects of what the students were doing, what they were engaging with. And we learnt this through their feedback in lectures, in seminars, through their reflective blogs and dialogues. And students were problem solving. They were having challenges with confidence, belonging, separating personal, professional and academic selves. They were realigning then their understanding of their personal reactions, their professional reactions, their academic reactions and responsibilities. So they separated and then they joined them back together again. So lots of challenges when that was happening, lots of emotional aftermath, lots of things happening with students and to students outside of our lectures and seminars. So in year 1 of the programme, Lynette was leading the year 1 module, and I had the pleasure of working with Lynette. And we began to think about what was happening in our lectures and seminars, and we were seeing that there was much more coming out from academic advising, through mentorship, through support to students who are finding that they needed to discuss more things. They needed to discuss more than maybe what we had envisaged. So Lynette and I become aware that we needed a space to engage with the changes that the students were experiencing. So therefore we began to change our sessions every week. We looked at reflective blogs and opening up spaces for our students to share what was happening to them in placement and what they were dealing with and how they were making sense of it and decoding it. And then how do they link what was happening in practice into their theoretical academic work, and how does it join up? How does it bridge over, and how does it make sense? So Lynette and I kind of spent about a year discussing this, and we realised perhaps we needed a space for students to be together, so that it wasn't always about us lecturers with our capes on saving the day, that actually the students were saving their own day, but they needed space to be able to do that. So the point that I made earlier about tradition in academia, sometimes we stick to the traditional, the schedules that we've inherited, that can actually be obviously really powerful for us as lecturers because we need that time and space, but they can be sometimes detrimental because we can just always adhere to what we're offered and we don't think outside of that. So we began to look at timetabling, scheduling, and how we could make sure that our students could unite with each other to talk, to share about all these things that were kind of exploding from placement, that we realised that we weren't able to kind of harness per se at that time as fully as we could. So Lynette and I discussed the buddy system, and I'll share a reflection. Lynette sort of made a comment about the buddy system. She said, yeah, that's the philosophy of it, about where the students actually buddy up, our year 1s and 2s. We realised there was a real lost opportunity for our students in year 1 and year 2 to network, to share their experience, to consolidate their learning, to fit in and belong to their discipline. And Lynette said, well, buddy system philosophy is fine, but maybe we need to call it something different because, you know, it's in practice, it's in academia, we kind of have a different meaning for it. So we text each other through WhatsApp for quite a while, trying to think of a concept and a name, and hence Advogogy became created. But again, with any creation, there's always lots of fertility dimensions. So there was lots of reasons why Advogogy was created. It was created from the students, from placement, from the settings, from the experiences, from engaging and listening to our students, and from the team, the unique team that we worked with. So the creation stage then was supported by Dr. Nikki Spalls, who enabled us to carry on and make changes in our programme to ensure that the buddy system, which is now called Advogogy, could be realised. So Lynette, then Janelle and myself creatively looked for spaces as to where students could meet up outside of, or in view of, or because of the lectures and the seminars. So it wasn't always going to be the tutor leading and the academic requirements leading. We needed space for placement. So we began through the placement modules in year 2. So this was after 1 year. So moving on to year 2, when we opened up our year 2 placement module, we realised that we could set out a couple of times a year. So we started off just with 3 sessions throughout the academic year, where Advogogy spaces would be created. So with the help of, with the input and the leadership from Janelle, Lourdes, Hannah and myself, we then planned out 3 Advogogy sessions where our year 1 students and our year 2 students would be grouped in small groups together. And we didn't really know what was going to happen. We just said, let's do this. Our students are telling us all these things through their reflections, their expressions, their dialogues, through module evaluations. They're telling us lots of things. Let's see what happens. And that's kind of really, to be honest, that's what it was. It was, let's see how this is responded to. Do students want this space? We think they do from listening to them, but do they? So we kind of planned the sessions. We tried to find the spaces throughout the academic calendar, and we did. So I'll go on to Advogogy in a little bit in a second, but just to share with you, Advogogy is happening in our teaching and learning, and it's really important for us to celebrate the teaching and learning and not go rushing off into research to be this more, more powerful thing to be looking into. Let's actually celebrate the teaching and the learning, the interactions, the dialogues of what's happening with our students and what's being created that we thought would be, but actually what we didn't know would be. So really enjoying and playing with and celebrating the invisible becoming visible, because all these things were happening, but until we tuned in and engaged with them, we kind of didn't know that. And obviously there's going to be more invisible things happening to do with Advogogy and students in placement that we can't wait to find out more about. So a bit of playfulness as well, and a bit of fun and curiosity, and those aspects of our role to celebrate, I think, is something particularly in such challenging times in academia to really relish. So the teaching and learning placement research phase is our next phase, and it's not that it's more important than the phase of the teaching and learning, but we're going to kind of look at different phases that have been provoked through Advogogy because we want to learn more. So why not frame it, why not learn from it and share it and disseminate it? So in 2024 to 2026, the next 2 academic years, we're going to formalise a research project and our ethical permissions to carry on. And we're going to research with year 1, 2 and 3 students, with early years stakeholders and the settings and the placements that we're in. And the early years experts involved with the research, with engaging with the students through placement, are myself, Janelle, Lourdes, Hannah, all the names here, Lisa, Sarah, Vipon, Mona, Alina and Dilys. I hope I haven't missed anybody out there. And that's also then with Nikki and Lynette, who I mentioned earlier. So we've got the whole of the early years team involved at different phases, which is really exciting, so that this is the voices of all of our students, all of our staff and our stakeholders together here and creating something that we don't know quite where it's going to go, but we know where it is at the moment. So as you can see in this picture as well, you know, looking at our children who are in placements, they're so unique, they're so original. Looking at each placement and each environment, they're so original, so different. The context, the way that everybody fits together, works together or not, will be very different for our students when they enter. And this richness that they've been coming back to sharing with us has been absolutely mind-blowing to engage with. So there are lots of ethical procedures that we will make sure are in place before we actually change this into a research project. But for the teaching and learning side, for the phase of the teaching and learning, the enjoyment of engaging with our students, learning from them, listening to them, and then changing what we're doing is really been kind of powerful for us to work on. So the research phases, again, with the students, tutors and the stakeholders, we aim to learn from the placement, and we want to get the perceptions and the perspectives from the stakeholders. What's it like for them with our students? What's the outcome? What's happening? What's it like for our students? What's it like for us on the academic side? And we want to get kind of a real idea. So we're looking in, through, outside. So it's like going on a bear hunt. The book, the story, we're going on a bear hunt, we're going under it, through it, over it, you know, every way we can. We want to look at placement experiences at a much wider dimension that maybe we have been. So we hope to analyse our findings. The methods that we'll use probably where we have so far will be reflective blogs, dialogues, and interviews and focus group interviews with stakeholders, students and academics. We obviously will analyse our findings and then think about what impact they're going to have and how we're going to use them. How can we disseminate our findings? We want to write up some CPD and training around the research, the placement and the findings. We want to create resources, publications, continue to evaluate our weekly teaching, module teaching, and create, you know, more research from it. So that's kind of the overview of where we are there. So as I said earlier, there's lots of dimensional learning that can be born from exploring and engaging with placement and listening about how students learn, what they learn and how they express and deal with placement. So one of the points that came out from the Advogogy is who is learning during placement experiences. Obviously the students, their first-hand reflections and experiences are rich, they're real, they're authentic, and they're alive, very exciting. The placement team, we're learning because we're engaging with our students, we're responding to them. The tutors in this and the practitioners in the settings, obviously they're responding to our students' needs, and again, much more change happening through the engagement of every student who goes into a placement. There's a huge explosion of movement and change happening. And how are we tapping into that? How are we learning from it? So what will happen now and what will happen to what the students have learned and how they can channel it into their degree, how they can channel it into their professionalism, how they can transform from where they were to where they are now and to where they're going, this continuous transformation process. The thinking of that has emerged from Advogogy and from our reflections on placement so far. And again, that's been really powerful to try to contain and to look into. So how do we manage this the transformation of our students? How do we celebrate it? Does our assessment actually enable students to celebrate what they've learned, what they've done? And how do we know that our assessment is transformative just as much as our student learning is? So we've begun to consciously engage with this a lot more, and we're hoping to find out a lot more from it. So just to sum up, Advogogy, so learning about placement, really began with us realizing, reflecting from when our students just over 2 years ago, just over 2 years ago, we began to have placement, to engage with placement. And then when we offered it through our teaching and learning, we realised through module evaluation, our tutor discussions, our reflections, and from engaging with our students on placement, we realised that there needed to be more space, more talking, sharing, trusting, and expression happening. And again, we've got the arrow in the middle of there. That's where our advogogy kind of concept is being framed. So how the concept of advogogy was created and how it evolved, it was about belonging and owning our learning, owning our learning, and being immersed in it. We noticed that the programme schedule and the weekly way that lectures and seminars were happening, were unfolding, were powerful, but we also noticed that the early childhood studies professionals who were evolving themselves, they needed opportunity for further creative engagement, for dialogues, for shared reflections, and for sharing how they reacted, to have time to consolidate, to have time to celebrate, to have time to commiserate what was happening. And we've had quite a lot of dialogues with all of those things happening. But we realised that there was need for shared reflections and that were going to be student-led. We didn't always need the tutor to come in and give them strategies that actually some of our students who maybe had more practice experience or other experience could, or what's the word I'm thinking of? Transferable skills, that's the word. We're able to actually support the students and then dialogue and talk about the strategies so that it was more owned by the students and less initiated by us working with the students. So the positionality of teaching and learning within the advogogy spaces became something that we focused on as a team. The positionality of teaching and learning. When does it stop? When does it change? When do you pull away and stop being the leader and the teacher? And when do you start listening more and opening up spaces for rich dialogue so that professionalism can actually unfold and happen, perhaps in places where it might not happen for students in placement or if they were on their own? When do we pull away and support that? And this is what the advogogy model is about. It's about the positionality of our teaching and learning environments. How do we enable? How do we know that we're enabling? And Scollin and Farini in 21 and 22 and some forthcoming work in 24 research on enabling and how do we know that an environment is as enabling as we think it is. So how do we open up the realms of student engagement, student consolidation of their learning, student opportunity to be brave and creative in a safe environment? When and how are we doing that in our degrees, in our programmes? Are we doing it as effectively as we think we are? So all of these kind of reflections were really provoked through our advogogy and placement dialogues and experiences. So how do we open up creativity in new realms, not just for students, but actually for the tutors, the academics who are working with and for our students? How do we then share that and bring that into our stakeholders and then involve them in the process? So how do we channel differently? What is 21st century learning and how should it look? How do we know that the traditional and the heritage ways of learning are not being followed unconsciously? How are we challenging what we've inherited and how are we doing it differently? What can we disown or what can we evolve? If we always do what we always did, we will always get what we always got. So, and just to bring in my son here, he's now 37, but I used to say to him, you know, Liam, have you got a job yet? You know, did you get what's happening with you? And he used to say, Mum, it's not the 80s anymore. You can't just go in and say, is there a job here? And they'll say, yeah, you can start now. He said, you know, there was no such thing as induction and policy and HR in your day, Mum. It's different now. So that was him about 20 years ago when I was trying to get him out to work. And that was 20 years ago. So we can see there's always continual shifts. And funny enough, not only are our students experience things that maybe we didn't, but they're gaining more skills, more knowledges that maybe we need to tap into and understand and learn from. So we as tutors, we're being more reflective, we're evaluating and we're learning from each other, from the students, from our stakeholders. We're moving on together. So I'll be summing up really shortly now, so we've got time for dialogue, which is interesting. So it says to me I've got 3 minutes left on my timer. So we've actually built the placement modules, for instance, and Advogogy are really built on advocacy, leading, dialogue, learning and reflecting. And obviously if we look at leadership and advocacy, we've been looking at Pascal and Bertram's work, particularly on practice. We've been looking at Sark and O'Sullivan's work on leadership and pedagogical leadership. We've been looking at Osgood's work on professionalism. If we look at dialogue and learning, we've been building on the work of Paulo Freire, particularly on critical pedagogy, David Boom's work on dialogue, and Freeney and Scolland's work on facilitation, and Beraldi's work on narratives. We've also been looking at leading and reflection and learning. So we were looking at Shirley Allen's book that she led on with Mary Wally, Maureen Lee and myself, where we looked at reflective professionalism and how to develop your professionalism in practice to deal with change and to deal with all these things that we go through in placement. We've also been looking at environments that enable with Scolland and Freeney, where we talk about, are we as enabling as we think we are? When does the positionality of the teacher change? And actually, who is the teacher? Is it maybe the child and the adult? Is it the academic and the student? Or do they change over? Do we enable them to change over? Are we giving space for that? So these are all the sort of, in a nutshell, these are the theoretical kind of crossovers of our framework that underpins our placement and our Advogogy module. So what have we found out so far? We found out that we need to slow down our teaching. We need to slow down our reflective processes. We need to ensure that students have time that they can value so that they can discuss their placement experiences, that they can consolidate their learning, they can make sense, they can belong to their early childhood studies discipline and community, that they belong to Middlesex community, that they have different groups that they can link into and change, and that their identity, they can link into that. Who am I? What am I today that I wasn't yesterday, that I might be tomorrow? What am I conscious of today that I didn't know before? And one of the things that we found out is the students, one of the questions we asked them in year 2 is, what do you know now that you didn't know in year 1? Boom, we had this huge, after a while, when they kind of got into the question, the students were just absolutely pouring out these skills, these knowledges, these kind of levels of engagement with placement, but also with their theory. So their theory into practice, practice into theory, all this was exuding out from our year 2 students particularly. And when they began to share that with their year 1 students, it was fascinating and it was amazing. And those of us that have been involved in this phase, we're just analysing all of that now for our module to support our year 3 placement module, but also then to support and to underpin our research that we're going to be undertaking. So one of the things, fun enough, that came out from Advogogy was, yes, we were doing it because we realised, as I said earlier, that the students needed something more. They needed to network, they needed to be together, needed space. But actually what we hadn't envisaged how much the academics would enjoy listening to the student learning, how much we would be informed and we would gain from it. But actually, when we started the Advogogy and we offered the space to the students, those lecturers who were involved in organising and kind of going with the students into their spaces just to be in the room, we reflected together. And the more we reflected throughout the year, it really brought us together. It kind of strengthened our team, our networks, our friendships. It impacted on our understanding. It enabled us to have a deeper insight into the programme, into the needs of the students, into assessment, into teaching, that we ever thought that we would have. And that was because of the power of listening to students who were leading us. That was quite powerful for us to experience as a team. And because of that, we have been able to, just got a couple of notes there. So we were able to support the recent sprints, for instance, that we've had in our university. We were able to change assessment, we wrote new modules, we created new modules from listening to our students, and from kind of thinking about what was needed in the sector. So Advogogy already had an impact that we hadn't really perceived it would have from our meetings and our reflections. And this is outside what the students were doing. This is what the academics were doing. Because of the students and the Advogogy, we made such a difference because of our level of consolidation and immersion together and the authentic discussion. And we found out that it was pleasurable, it was enjoying, and there was a lot of positives from it. So we also found as well that we've learned much more about being immersive into the 21st century student placement experience. What's it like in real life? So our students were going into placement, they were learning about real life, real family, real situations in the context. They were learning about their professional requirements, the content, and then they were learning about the discipline of early childhood. But actually, as they were learning it, so were we, and we were able then to develop an impact on our programme a little bit more. So to sum up, inside, outside, underneath, through, on top of, underneath Advogogy. So we have this model, Advogogy, and it's really about student-led, and it's about creating space so that the students can engage in a safe, enabling environment where they can consolidate their learning, where they can make sense of it, where they can pull it apart, play with it, be playful with their learning, and have some fun with it. Then have some links to, you know, the academic side, and bring their practice and their theory together, because it doesn't just happen. We expect it to happen, but sometimes we can just question ourselves, are we doing enough for our students and ourselves to make that transition, that transformation, as supportive as it can be? So there's so much that's been missed out here so far. I can't kind of bring it all into 30 minutes, but this is an overall of where we are with our placement experiences in year 1 and year 2. And we're really looking forward to working in year 3 with our students. We're really looking forward, because our students, when they evaluated Advogogy and it helped us to create it, they said they wanted more of it. They want more Advogogy. They want more space to talk, to dialogue, to connect, to develop their identity, to be heard, to support each other, and to recognise how much they've learned, to celebrate. So far, where are we? Well, the tutors so far kind of tried to reflect on Advogogy. We've tried to kind of have the, you know, the letters of Advogogy on the side there, and a lot of the concepts and the ideas and the provocations that we've got from it so far. This slide hasn't got everybody's contributions in yet, because we're still pondering on it. This is teaching and learning, module evaluation, Advogogy analysis happening in process now. We've still got quite a lot to do, so we haven't finished yet. So where are we so far? We're going to have a forthcoming dissemination to present Advogogy into an article and journal, and to do some further dissemination of our work. And we look forward to any ideas, contributions, suggestions from anybody here today, and in the future when we're getting Advogogy out there, to have more ideas. And we'd also like to work with other departments, other programmes, because Advogogy, whilst it's been born from early years, it definitely is a space and a concept and a model that could be used across other programmes for different purposes and reasons. So that's where we are. We're still just peeping our heads out the cave. We're not quite sure if we're going out there yet, or which direction we're going in, or what layer. But there's even a lot to look at in the cave before we go out of the cave. So that's where we are with Advogogy at the moment. So look forward to hearing from those who are here today to reflect, respond, react, any kind of ideas, or just to share placement experience, really. So as a chair, I don't want to now talk too much. I'm going to stop. So I'm hoping to hear from anybody. So just if you want to use the chat or just jump in, please do feel free. And also we've got the Advogogy team here, which is exciting. So you've got all the leaders of the programme here.
Angela, I just wanted to say thank you so much for, pulling that all together and expressing it, because we felt right at the beginning, even with those early discussions, Advogogy, it just could be so huge, just so infinite and limitless that, actually even just pulling together what you have to present to us today is absolutely, it's awe-inspiring. Just thank you so much for all your work on that.
Thank you, Lynette. Yeah, I think as a team, when we first started doing it, let's be honest, you don't know where it's going or what you're doing sometimes, but something needs to change and something needs to happen. And where Advogogy is now to where it's going to go, we don't know. And we're not going to say we've got this finished article and let's just celebrate and show how wonderful we are. I think we should show how wonderful we are as a team, where we've come together to realise there was more that we could work with or do differently. And I think to be different in academia on our programmes, I think we shouldn't be so scared of. But you do need a team that pulls together for that works together, and that's the only way that this could happen. It's not one person, one thing, it's everybody. And that's lovely. It's really, on many levels, it's exciting and nice to be part of. So I know we've got a few of the Advogogy phase tutors here. I don't know if you want to jump in on your responses to where we are and how that's, because I've missed out so much because I wanted to get it through in 30 minutes. Obviously there's much more stages here that we're analysing and we're looking at and learning from, but I don't know if anybody from the...
Angie, there's a question in the chat. I don't know if you can see the chat or if you need Shams to read it to you.
Yeah, I've got it there. Thank you for pointing that out. I didn't see it, sorry. So Claire, Claire, would you want to ask the question yourself rather than me reading for you? You just need to take your...
Sorry, I'm muted. Yeah, no, it's really interesting. I'm just sort of thinking about, obviously I'm thinking about it with the sort of second year EDU placement, which is the only year it happens. So sort of my questions are coming from through that prism. So I was thinking, how important is it for the students to talk across year groups? Because you made in the talk, you spoke a lot about how the second years kind of talk to the first years and how that was mutually beneficial for both groups. And I'm thinking, in EDU, we've only got 1 year. So would it work as well if it was just the peers within 1 year sort of discussing it? And in that case, what makes it different from a seminar? Is it just that you are absenting yourself as tutors from the spaces where the discussions are taking place? And then the second question was, did the second year students get any credit for the support they gave the first years? Because in the past, I know we have tried to get to do mentoring, and what we found was, students were reluctant to volunteer unless they got some kind of credit for it, either monetary, as in the SLAs, or some sort of mark credit somehow for it. So I was just wondering about how you motivated people to participate. So I was thinking, even if we then had like this year's current second years going into the third year, could we motivate them to somehow talk to our second years, but how do we motivate them? That kind of thing.
Wow, thanks, Claire. That's a very layered question. And again, I'm quite happy to answer that, but I don't know if anybody from the team, from the Advogogy team, wants to come in there, because I don't want to be the one talking all the time, because it's a team approach.
I'm happy to contribute.
Thank you, Lourdes.
So that's a super important question, Claire, because I think that the way it differentiates itself from a seminar is the fact that you have the year twos are more experienced. They've been through the placement for a couple of years, so they can bring something to the plate, something that the first years have never been through. So there's already a disparity that brings a lot of dialogue and conversation, because just to give you an example, when you mention something that how can the year twos benefit from doing this? How can we bring them in? And one of the benefits that they have is that they have to bring some information to their GPC, so the graduate competence, practitioner competences. So there is an area there on the graduate competences they have to demonstrate their leadership. So when they are conveying that information to the year ones, they are explaining how they have gone through it, and they have they're importing that information. And the only way to do that is by being in placement yourself. There's nothing that we're going to be able to transmit. It's not transferable from our point of view. We've been in placement so many years ago. This is more fresh. This is something that they can, it's more, the exchange it's more tangible, it's more visible. And, you know, and I just wanted to add as well that the environment in this case, that when Angela was talking about how do we enable, how is Advocacy enabling our students? And I think in this case, the environment is the setting and Middlesex both at the same time, because it's giving the opportunities for the students to feel like they belong not only to the early year sectors, but also to Middlesex, because they are providing something, they are giving back to the students. I hope I've answered the question.
Thank you, Lourdes. Did anybody else from the team want to add to Lourdes's point to, in response to Claire's questions?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I think it's the placement that gives them the momentum, their experiences, and that they need to talk about it. And so even if, going back to Claire's point about just being 1 year group, there's a benefit for that, because they're all in the process at different parts of the cave, as to go back to Angela's metaphor there. They're able to scaffold each other even within a year group. Obviously the benefits for the second years talking to first years give greater breadth, but I still think it would work within the 1 year group.
Because my experience of teaching practice is that, you know, when trainee teachers team teach and then they sort of debrief after it, that debrief discussion is very beneficial. Even though they're all at the same level, they are able to make contributions sort of to the discussion about trying to work out, you know, how to deal with particular issues or best way of approaching things.
Thank you.
And
Claire.
it's helpful to know
Hannah,
that the graduate competencies, you know, the leadership thing is a motivator for them to participate. I don't think we have anything similar in ed studies as such. I mean, we have the graduate competencies, the Middlesex graduate competencies, which have leadership, but we don't have an external kind of obligation that says leadership for them to prove.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. And Hannah, were you going to come in there as well, just to?
Yeah, just to say, it was exactly as Dilys said. It was very different to the seminars. Like, there was such an energy in the room once that, like, and the noise level and the kind of energy of the conversation was, you know, just so different to a seminar. Partly because we were kind of, you know, it was over to them. They were choosing what to talk about. But also, as you said, that having that space to talk about their experiences. But we did also notice a difference once the first years had started going into placement, because suddenly they had, because we did the first session before, and they were kind of a little bit more wanting to talk about assessments and things like that. And then there was a real change when they all, and so I think it would work really well, you know, with the same year group, because they all had challenges, and they were really talking about, you know, professional conduct, issues they had in placement, how they dealt with them with their, you know, with the professionals in the setting. So, yeah, there were lots of issues that I think came up. And also, again, just a space for them to kind of gel as a year group. So a lot of them said that they didn't really have that.
Yeah, thank you. I've got some responses, but I'll come back to it. I know Lisa's got her hand up. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Hannah, for that.
Thank you, Angie. It was excellent. Just quite exciting, actually, for us to see the placement is not being treated like a bolt-on. It's like actually really fundamental to, which is something I've always felt, but didn't think that the HE model would ever recognise it in the early, you know, in the discipline, which again you've told me off for not using that word. I have to use that word more, so I'm trying. But what I wanted to say is that I just think the opportunities that you're giving the students to to engage in that dialogic activity is really important, and it's something really simplistic that actually is really powerful, because I deal with the students on I suppose from a more operational point of view in making sure that everything's from placement, just to give anyone that doesn't know what I do, but looking after placement, speaking to stakeholders, speaking to providers. So it's quite quite an operational level to a degree. But I've been speaking to them over the last few weeks quite a lot. And it's surprising when you get to, obviously I'm asking them, I need this information from you. Have you done this? Have you done that? So it's a little bit, like I said, operational. And then I've started something which I was quite surprised at the reaction, is just asking them, how's placement going? And they just can't wait to talk. It's very much like, oh, Lisa's emailing us. What have we done wrong? What haven't we done? And then by just asking them, you know, thank you for giving me your DBS details. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for sending me that. Thank you. By the way, how's placement going? And then the email I get back, the tone changes completely. It's like all of a sudden, it's something so simple as how's it going? I really love it. It's great, you know, and it's been only positive. You know, so it's something that I just asked off to try to lighten the mood, so I'm not seen as the big bad witch on the team. And yeah, it was really powerful. So again, I just think we underestimated how important it is and powerful it can be just to our students. How's it going?
Definitely. Thank you, Lisa. I can see Nick. Maybe our last speaker might be Nick, and then I can sum up, and then we'll be our lunchtime session will be on time. So I'll come over to you, Nick.
Kind of follows on, actually. So I was just really interested to know what you got about what's happening in early years settings today, that you may be being out of it in practice you hadn't had, bearing in mind this idea of dialogue. So just be really interested to hear what new insights you got from hearing their coalface experiences.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Yeah, it's interesting, actually. And that's why that concept of the 21st century pedagogue, like the student practitioner, we really that's come out from our tutor kind of academic reflections together, because we've really enjoyed meeting up throughout the year. And I suppose kind of some of the points, Nick, that have come out is that, you know, the impact of policy, of finance, of the government, of funding cuts. You're not hearing those words expressed explicitly, but you're hearing from students about what's happening in practice, such as a huge high turnover, impact on who their key person might be, instability or stability, investment in a student, or just using them as a resource. Let's get them in. We just need free bodies in the setting to count. You know, we're learning about a true insight, really. So that's quite, but it's about how we translate that and how we're hearing and expressing that. That's something that's coming out that I don't think us as a team have had time to research. Like we've done it, but we need to research it now. We're going to hopefully, after teaching and marking, we're going to meet together and kind of look into that further. But we've learned, I think, and again, I'm sure Hannah or Lourdes will jump in here, but we've learned, and or anyone else actually who's involved in the placement, but we've learned that we can, as Lisa just said, we can get caught up in the functional aspects of placement. You know, have you done all your stuff? Are you in place? Have you gone? Have you done your days? There's all that going on. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the programme, it's this dimensional aspect of placement. And placement isn't just like, if I hold my pen up here, there's placement, this is placement. Actually, placement goes far beyond. So it's like that cave. The impact of placement is huge. And our students sometimes take, what we've learned is our students take sometimes a couple of weeks to let something out, because they haven't known how to express it. And that's why the space is really important for us to offer this to our students as part of our programme, kind of under the, you know, under anything, but at the moment Advogogy is recognising that, and it's an important model for any programme, that stuff that happens in placement, there's going to be an emotional aftermath but sometimes it doesn't come out straight away because of the busyness of, oh, I've got my assignment to do. That's happened. But we've had students in our reflective blogs talk about, I'm just going to call it a dilemma for now, like particular dilemmas that come out. And this is something that's one of the themes from analysis so far from the module evaluation. The dilemmas that they're dealing with, be it skills, be it knowledges, be it relationships, be it, you know, reflecting on what they did and thinking I should have done it a bit differently now. And it's that consciousness and it's that caring side of our students and that responsibility that doesn't just happen. If they don't do it right at that moment, there's an evolving process, that transformative, as I spoke about in the earlier, there's that transformative process that our students are dealing with, and they need space to consolidate. And I think that's one of the learning things that we've got from this, Nick. I hope there's many more, but they're kind of really deep points. And I think that just for the last 2 minutes, that links to Claire's point. I'm going to just bridge over. Claire said, how important is it? Well, it's really important. What we've found and what we've all been impacted on and learned from our students on our programme, from where we've been able to use their input to impact on Sprint, for instance, or to create a new module, or just to bond with them and to know them a little bit more and to listen, has been absolutely informative. And I do understand when you say, what couldn't the students get out of it, Claire? I understand that. And I know Lynette said that there's a space to look at micro credentials. And again, our students get out of it. They can write up their reflective blogs. They can gather evidence, as Dilys has been leading on that strong evidence, weak evidence, so that they can use that for their academic assignments. They can use it for their GPCs to gather their evidence to be that practitioner that they want to be when they leave, to make sure they meet the criteria. So there's lots of layers, everything's layered, and it's basically the more we do with them, the more we're seeing opportunities, the more then we can then layer and understand how to manage it. Because I think sometimes assessment looks very, very kind of compartmentalized and this is what we're doing, but actually assessment opportunities are huge. So those micro credentials that Lynette's talking about, the GPCs that Lord S was talking about earlier, you know, there's lots of things that you're going to get out of it. It's not always about monetary. And one of the things, just to kind of sum up the power, which we had not ever, any of us on the phase of the advocacy with the students, we did not think that we would hear students say, we're so kind of confident in our, as early years, within the discipline of early years. We know that we're early childhood studies students. We know that we're advocates. We know that we're pedagogues, and we know where we belong. And that was really powerful. And then we've got some of our team that work on other modules and not just on our module. And they've said that the students on their other module that they teach on don't have that. So we don't know why. And it's not to do with, you know, we don't know why. But is it because we've been really fixed in and focusing on early childhood studies and the discipline of it and belonging with, you know, what is it about that our students are feeling so secure in their identity? And is that good or not? Maybe it's not so good. Maybe we shouldn't have them so secure in their identity. You know, this is great dialogue for future. And again, just the last strand of your question, Claire, was about how does it differ? And I think Hannah answered that. Like, I don't really need to add on it, but it isn't a seminar, it isn't a lecture, it's a space. And it's the student space. It's not our space, what we think we should be happening in there. It's a space to say, right, year 1 and year 2, you're going to network. Let's see what goes on. It's scary, it's hard, it's unknown. Are you doing the right thing? And we've had many ethical dilemmas on it. What's going to open up? What could happen? Could it go wrong? You know, I won't go into that now, but all of us have got, you know, we've had big dialogues on that. So it's really dimensional, it's really transformative, and it's really exciting. I'm going to sum it up there and close it down, I think, just for today. So I hope you've enjoyed, well, all of us are part of it, I think, mostly here as part of Advogogs. We're all advogogies. So we're all about leadership, learning, dialoguing, you know, networking, trusting, and evolving and transforming. And that's where our advocacy model is at the moment. So we hope to disseminate and share more with you all in the future as this journey progresses. So again, great. Thank you for the team who are here that's made it happen, and our students and all our supporters. So, and thanks all for the questions today and the dialogues. could do with another hour really, but thanks very much.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much,
Vivian.
Angie.
Thank
Well
you.
done, Angela. Yes.
Thank you, Angela.
Thanks, team.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.